for everyone tuning in, this is another episode of Invest Smart with Steadily. I'm your host, Scott Brown. I work on the partnerships team at Steadily. On today's episode, we have Paul from Hubzu. Paul is the VP of National Business Development at Hubzu. Paul, thanks for joining us
Thank
today.
you, Scott. I'm really glad to be here, and thank you to Steadily as well for this opportunity.
Absolutely. So, hey, Paul, could you tell the listeners a little bit more about Hubzu and kind of how you guys might fill some gaps in the real estate market?
Sure. I'll kind of provide a little context maybe before launching in, but so Hubzu is one of about 12 different businesses owned by Altisource. So Altisource is a large real estate company, publicly traded. We're headquartered in Luxembourg, and so Hubzu is our online real estate marketplace, and it was started in 2009 as the first online marketplace. Prior to that, there had not been a place online to buy and sell real estate, and so it's been very successful. We've sold 280,000 plus homes at this point, and we have 2.5 million buyers on the platform. We're still the second largest seller of default properties in the country, and now Hubzu's diversifying its inventory channels, and now we sell retail properties through its broker partner program and off-market properties through its wholesale program. So when it was conceived and when it was launched, Hubzu was created primarily with the purpose of providing a massive scale nationwide marketing platform for default properties that was convenient. So it was easy to bid or buy at home or on the go. It was easy to use. The platform is simple in its design and its application. And it's also very transparent, and it's fair for all participants, all buyer types, and it's agent friendly. It's fully transparent with little or no contingencies, so all buyers are on the same playing field. And if I really had to say what is the gap that Hubzu fills in real estate, and so there are two, and at times, it fluctuates in orders of importance, but liquidity would be first in my mind, and then the second is opportunity. I'll explain a little bit of my rationale for each one. So with liquidity, Hubzu creates extreme liquidity during all market cycles, and that allows Hubzu to be a proven, reliable partner for predictable and repeatable outcomes. And so this additional liquidity that Hubzu provides sellers, we have 2.5 million buyers on the platform, is invaluable across the normal ups and downs of real estate. And it's also extremely helpful for efficient scaling with both disposition and acquisition, and that's nationwide. And so when you're operating in all 50 states plus the territories, liquidity is extremely important over long stretches of time. And then opportunity. This is an interesting one because it's a great place to both buy and sell real estate. And so, as I mentioned right off the bat, we've recently diversified our inventory channels far beyond traditional default inventory. And as we've done so, our buyer base has grown. And so we're selling retail properties through our broker partner channel. And some of the largest brokerages in the country are now utilizing Hubzu for disposition in what we refer to as a dual path, which allows a broker to put a property on the MLS and then expand the reach to our buyer base, which is beyond, and to syndicated sites. So it just essentially leverages the opportunity set for a seller. And it does so in a transparent manner. And this has been extremely popular with brokerages post NAR lawsuits. So that's the big gap right now is changed, as NAR lawsuits have changed the landscape of real estate. The utility value proposition of Hubzu has skyrocketed to that specific demographic. And then also Hubzu is now moved into the off-market space through its wholesale channel. And this is an interesting one because it's a great source of unique inventory with favorable investment potential. So as we've had high inflation and high price appreciation for properties, many homeowners are choosing to sell through the wholesale channel because they were looking for a quick sale, and so Hubzu is a perfect platform for it.
Wow. So you guys wear a few different hats for the marketplace. It sounds like for those real estate
Yeah,
investors
we
out there.
we we continue to try to innovate, to be, present for market conditions, and also expand the opportunities to set for our buyers and sellers.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for running through that. That was super interesting. I think that that's a lot of value add as far as kind of what you can provide to those real estate investors. Um, just simplifying transactions, and it sounds like you guys do a great job of getting more eyes on
No
those
question.
listings.
Sure.
Mhm. Hey, so Paul, so segueing a little bit into a new topic, could you give everyone listening today or tuning in, would you mind giving them like a step-by-step guide to the foreclosure and auction process?
Sure. Um, it's pretty simple, not necessarily fun, but pretty simple. So it starts by a borrower is in default, and typically the borrower receives a notification that they're in default. It's called an NOD, and uh, usually the servicer or bank tries to create a loss mitigation solution or a workout strategy for that borrower, um, and for the lender. And there are a couple of different types. There's forbearance or loan modification would be examples. We've seen those, even the forbearance was more recent during the pandemic, but those don't always work. And maybe that's not the best solution. And maybe the house is, staying in the house isn't going to be the right answer. And when that happens, a foreclosure auction occurs, and this is done at an advertised time and location. It's usually at a county courthouse steps, but sometimes it can occur online or at another location. But typically it's noted in the advertisements, and so it can sell at a foreclosure sale, and this is done to the highest bidder. Um, which will generally have to pay in full that day or else provide a large down payment with the remainder of the purchase price due in a short time frame. Or if it doesn't sell at that foreclosure sale, that certain property is still in default, and it ends up in something called REO inventory. And REO is an acronym. The industry loves acronyms, but REO stands for real estate owned. And that's often where Hubzu is it becomes incredibly valuable, because we begin at what we refer to as an REO auction on the Hubzu platform, and so we'll what the details are we can get into in a bit, but we'll run a series of 7-day auctions, um, and try to find the highest and best buyer in that 7-day window, and we will conduct these auctions back to back until we sell the property, and it really does work well. We tend to sell properties quickly and for a very good price. Um, but back to loss mitigation solutions. Hubzu came up with an interesting um, service or program that is requested by the borrower. So a servicer would send that notification of default. And then Hubzu has a program called Equity Shield. And it serves an interesting purpose because many people have a lot of equity in their homes these days. And so when they sell their property, they may still have hundreds of $1,000s, but they're in a cash pinch at that point. And because Hubzu has a lot of investors that are acquiring properties and then the first step is to find a tenant. This program, which is borrower requested, we have a call center where the borrower would call and arrange to have that property sold on Hubzu to an investor that is looking for a tenant. It doesn't mean that they have to find a buyer that's looking for a tenant. Some just want to, wipe their hands and move on with life, but some want to have a discreet and humane solution where they stay in their house. It's not disruptive, and then they might rent it back from that buyer, and it just skips a step with our buyer pool, and it's a good program. And so that's where we've tried to offer a little help in that arena.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's like 5 or 6 different things right there that you guys can help people out with in that kind of just in that segment of the
Sure.
market. So, um, if let's say, just hypothetically here, if this was my first time showing up to an auction, would you have any pieces of advice for that maybe first time auction goer?
Absolutely, and it's probably far beyond first time auction goer, but I'll kind of walk through and these are my thoughts. I've been in the investment world for a long time, and I think these are keys far beyond simply an auction. But I think due diligence is key here. Um, you're just trying to gather information. So drive by the house if possible, or go in the house if possible, and make sure you have good comps. Both if it's a distressed property and if it's a non-distressed property, and then know what you've got to have a game plan. Know what you're comfortable bidding up to before going to that auction, and then follow that plan. And it's important to make sure your finances are in order. At an auction, you're going to need to have a cashier's check, or for the foreclosure sales. Um, and getting your feet wet a little bit. If possible, attend an auction as a spectator. You don't have to bid on a property if you're just interested in watching the process and learning about how it works. I'd say maybe more than anything is to believe in yourself and don't be intimidated by it. I mean, real estate is sold through either a formal or an informal auction every time. And so if you hire a broker to help in the process, there's still a loose auction, as there may be several buyers trying to buy that same property and making offers simultaneously. So I guess the best tip would be do your homework and operate with a disciplined game plan.
Totally makes sense. So for maybe those investors that are using Hubzu or considering using Hubzu, what would be some strategies or suggestions on your end that would help them kind of maximize like a return on investment for those properties that they did acquire through Hubzu?
I'd I'd go back to my last line, which is have a game plan. A written game plan is best. And so make sure you have a couple of realistic ways to get paid on a purchase, and not, you know, strange ideas. They need to be real ideas. Like you could turn around and sell it for profit, like because your entry point was good, or you could fix it up and there's an implied return for that additional investment. Or you can rent it out, and that makes it possible to amortize the entire process. And so perhaps there's, by becoming a renter, a landlord, you're also an investor, and perhaps could capture price appreciation if that property goes up in value. Um, One thing I would try to focus on, and though, is the entry point, and then I think that's key. Uh, you've got to only bid up to what you believe the value of that property is, or should be, in an as is condition. And it's the one thing you can control is your entry. So to maximize return, I would make sure you buy a property that is at or below the property that makes sense. It's low enough to make a good ROI after maintenance and repairs and ongoing expenses. You know, you're going to have insurance, potentially financing fees. If you're hiring a property management company, you're going to have management fees and then taxes, et cetera. So there's calculate those costs. And then while I don't think that people spend enough time on this one, is focusing on the exit plan even before the entry. And that is, why did you buy it? Know when you plan to sell it. When is the property going to no longer have the tax breaks you were looking for, or the potential for rental income, or maybe you're expecting price to decrease, or you thought interest rates were going to fall and then they did, and now maybe they'll turn, and your thought is you wanted to buy it ahead of that, or a company was moving to a city and going to employ a bunch of people, and you purchased a property, and now the company moved and those people that work for the company did. Know what the plan was, what was the narrative, what were you following, and then make sure that you in a disciplined manner exit accordingly.
Do your homework. Have few options. It
Yeah, have
sounds
a
like.
few options on the way in and out, and follow your plan.
So maybe segueing or continuing down the alley of doing your homework. How would you say maybe Paul the insurance could help protect these investments and kind of enhance the return on investment for these properties?
I would say I look at it like this. An investment in real estate is an allocation of risk capital. And so the point is to profit with a disciplined, well-executed plan. And insurance protects your game plan and your capital as much as it does the house from an unforeseeable event. None of us know the future. There are unforeseeable events. It's going to happen. And therefore, it needs to be built into your strategy. So my suggestion is choose your insurance partner wisely. It really becomes a partnership. You will have to have that relationship. And so, here we are having this conversation with Steadily. Steadily is an expert in a niche of real estate in providing landlord insurance. And so that's a good partner if you're looking for a landlord to become a landlord and hold investment properties. So once you've chosen your insurance provider, make sure that the particular specific insurance you need they offer, and they have a proven track record of paying claims. It's basic stuff, but just verify that information and choose wisely.
Absolutely. Paul, do you have a few renovation tips and maybe value add improvement suggestions?
Well, I would say that you're going to always need to have a plan. And now I'm a broken record on that, but are are you going to fix and rent it, or are you going to fix and flip? And I think that the the strategy may be different. Maybe it's identical, but you've got to have that plan prior to purchasing your investment property, and this will help identify the amount of work you will put into the property after closing. And in all cases, be very cautious about overspending or over renovating to the point where you lose the possibility of solid ROI, or you're overbuilt for a particular area and you won't be able to get the same amount of money out of the property as you put into it. And so I would say that the dollars spent on renovation need to be not emotional dollars. They need to be, well thought out and mindful. And so ideally, you start by having a great general contractor and work crew lined up, so you can hit the ground running right after purchasing the property, so that you're back on the market for sale or for rent within days or weeks instead of months or years. And so, who's going to do the work? Do you have a relationship in place? Um, and what's the plan? So at Altisource, one of our companies, and it's a great company, it's called Granite, and they've focused on construction risk management for the past 3 decades. And we also, out of that group, built out a nationwide renovation team that can help. So, like, do your homework. Think about who you're going to use. Who are you? This is a bit like asking for guidance with an insurance provider. You know, it's a partnership. You're spending money on a property and you're going to try to get a return on that property, whether it's through higher rents over time or higher return by flipping it. But just again, it's basic math. It's not complicated, but make sure that you, in the process, operate with that plan and have the right partners in place.
I feel like there's a common theme going on this episode today, and it's maybe like less vibes and more due diligence is what I'm kind of hearing as far as kind of how you think a solid strategy
I
would be going with some of
Pencil to
these
paper,
investors.
I think so.
That's great. That's great. Well, Paul, segueing a little bit into another kind of topic. Um, could you go into a little bit how Hubzu's platform leverages tech for their investors?
Sure. In many ways. So Hubzu is always innovating. And so we have things like auto bidding, where an investor or buyer is able to have Hubzu continue the bidding process up to a max amount. And that's fantastic. Um, because then maybe you're not tied to your screen so much. You want to be participate in the auctions, and they're going to run over a 7-day window, and so you've already done your homework and due diligence, and you're willing to pay X, and so Hubzu can do the bidding for you on your behalf up to X, and maybe you'll win the auction, maybe you're not, and that's okay. I think that's something that really needs to be understood by buyers, is that not winning an auction is fine. I mean, you're going to have a lot of at bats. You're trying to get it at the right price, and then there's backup bidding, and this allows the seller, if say for example the high bid doesn't work out, um, it allows the seller to come in and accept a lower bid, so that I'm looking at it for both from the buy side but also on the sell side. And then we have an auction extension. So if someone, say, is sniping, coming in the last few seconds of an auction, and that, and you looked away, then we'll extend that auction and allow those that were involved in it to come back in and place their best bid, and it just keeps things fair. We allow for bidding via phone, and we have a mobile app, and so we make it easy to use, and that's always helpful. And we also provide a lot of information too. So we, right on the platform, you're going to see, and on these different auctions and properties, you're going to have access to price and tax history, school information, robust property descriptions, property attribute information, disclosures. Uh, two of Hubzu's companies, two of Altisource's companies are Rent Range and Nest Range. And so on our platform, a buyer is able to get a free rental estimate from our affiliate Rent Range. And that's really helpful if you're, and I'd say that's a first in class rental estimate too. And so if you're interested in becoming a landlord, you would totally want to use Rent Range to underwrite rent. And yet we also have a great sister company called Nest Range, and provides a very accurate AVM. It's configurable, and you can use it to enter your own comps and determine what you believe that property's value is, which that's very important in determining your high bid, what you're willing to pay for a property. And so we also have sample documents and agreements that the buyer needs to be aware of before bidding, but I'd say high level communication and a lot of embedded tech to really assist in the process and make it user friendly and easy.
That's honestly very similar to kind of how Steadily always been innovating and kind of had that mentality of innovating our products as far as kind of working through. It sounds like a lot of your guys' features or tech features on your guys' site kind of help grease the wheels to make just transactions move much faster than they used to.
Totally.
And help them be kind of a more quality transaction, more data backed. Again, less vibes and kind of more due diligence on
Yep.
that end.
Sure.
So I love that. Yeah. Steadily, we kind of do the same idea with the tech forward approach, where we have like integrated tools on the back end, whether it be through third party data companies, where again, like with the real estate information, we have aerial imaging, if I can say that correctly today, for basically for the properties, for us to track like roof conditions or debris in the field or on the property. And so again, like basically anything that we can figure out to help speed up things that used to take hours longer, days longer, weeks longer, even months longer, is anything that we can do to kind of automate that through another tech approach. That's going to help basically get our quotes and our policies bound. What used to take days and weeks and months now can be hours, minutes, and seconds. And so again, that's just really trying to grease the
Yep.
wheels of making the transaction easier and more educated, and just like a convenience factor
Sure.
also. So I love that. Yeah.
Great.
Awesome. Well, Paul, so lastly, so where would investors find resources to keep up with some current trends in the market?
I mean, a blanket statement is going to be the internet, because it's endless. But I'm going to start, pointing to specifics, but I would say that just to name a few, NAR, IMN, CoStar, Connected Investors, the MLS, and other syndication sites. I already mentioned Rent Range and Nest Range, but also think about your local realtor, and then things that matter to me, and maybe I think that they should matter to everyone. Liquidity. This is a house, and I have a friend in real estate. He says one house is a lot of houses, and I think that that's a good way of looking at real estate. And liquidity is imperative. That when you're needing to sell, that you have buyers, or if you're wanting to become a landlord, that you have renters, and so um, I would say general internet searches can help with real estate transaction volume, but you can be sure that as soon as you get to higher population centers like 500,000 and up, that's going to help solve for liquidity. And then I think that demographics are key. So this is information that can be learned. Are people moving to that location? What about businesses, or are they leaving? And what do people do to make a living in that area? What are the industries and jobs? And then I like boots on the ground. And so finding out a broker or agent who does a lot of volume in the area is a great resource. Call them. And then when you purchase a property from Hubzu and say you want to fix and flip that property, you can ask them to refer a general contractor. And then once your property's been fixed up, let that agent know there's a vested interest in working with you and helping you find the right contractor, because you're going to, work with that same broker and agent who can list that property back on Hubzu through our dual track Hubzu broker partner program. So it makes a ton of sense to go find an expert in that area and work with them, knowing that you'll be able to reward them on the backside. Then this is kind of key, and people don't. What I'm about to mention is politics and legal. If you want to become a landlord, there are certain states that are friendly to landlords and certain states that are not. And so find out what the laws are in your location or wherever you're going to buy a property, because many people found out during the pandemic that eviction's not so easy. And so that can be learned through the internet. And I know that when people are looking at a house, it's often looking at interest rates at the same time, because it affects real estate prices more than just about anything. And so it's impactful. And so I think that if I were to try to get a handle on interest rates, I would look at the U.S. 2-year note, as it tends to offer clues for the direction of monetary policy, which is the federal funds rate. And so this can be found on most financial websites, and I've found this to be more reliable just looking at the 2-year note than listening to the experts. And so I'd say the experts are overthinking it, and you're going to get too much. It's a cacophony of noise. And so I would just pull up a CNBC and see where the 2-year notes trading, and recognize that most of the time, not all of the time, most of the time, the Fed funds rate eventually finds its way to that place and stabilizes there. So that would be how I would go about finding information to make real estate decisions.
Awesome. Well, Paul, I really appreciate you joining us on this episode of Invest Smart with Steadily. So just for a quick recap, guys, we covered how Hubzu simplifies property acquisitions, how to navigate the foreclosure and auction process, how to maximize return on investment on auction properties, and then different ways to leverage technology for investment protection. So, Paul, most importantly, people tuning in for this episode, how do they start working with Hubzu today?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. That's easy. And then we'll arrange a conversation. I'm happy to pick up the phone and talk to you. And that's probably the easiest way. We're open for business, and we'd love to work with you. And there's a lot more than we do at Altisource. And so many times people work with Hubzu in the context of a broader end-to-end solution they're trying to achieve at Altisource. And so we've got a lot of products and services and solutions that certainly we can offer value to almost every enterprise in real estate.
Lovely. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining today on this episode today, Paul. I'm your host, Scott Brown. To everyone tuning in, thank you for tuning into this episode. And be sure to keep your eye out for the next episode of Invest Smart with Steadily.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Steadily. Thank you all for tuning in.